The best thing about being an options trader is it allows me to homeschool my children. It's important that I teach them the right way to think about the world as early as possible. Here's a picture my son made for me during his art class. I think it's beautiful.
What's going on, everybody? David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. Glad y'all made it. I was up watching the game. Not watching the game. I was listening to the game on the radio, my fault. Because I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to make my fantasy playoffs. I got to win this week to make my fantasy playoffs. I might not make it because it seems as if the Chiefs getting ready to make a comeback. And I'm playing against Xavier Worthy. And I forgot the name of that receiver. He from Clemson. Used to play for, I think, Tennessee. And now he used to play in for the Chiefs, right? I forgot his name. Watson, my bad, Watson. So I'm playing against them. Watson already got a touchdown after I heard Xavier Worthy just got a catch before I got off. So I probably won't make the playoffs, but in our playoff system, we got a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket. So I'm just probably gonna end up going in the loser's bracket, but let's see how it plays out, right? So because I was listening to some football and thinking about how the market's gonna open up tomorrow, I said, let me go ahead and do a quick video based on economics on the NFL, because the NFL has a really, really interesting business model. But most importantly, what I want to try to help you understand is something that we call inelastic demand and inelastic products. And the reason why this is going to be beneficial to you is first from a business standpoint, right? When you're a business and you're pricing your products, you want to understand the elasticity or the inelasticity of your product, right? So you want to understand, based on how you price your product, how much demand it creates. Because what you want to understand from a classic economic standpoint is if you lower your price, you should expect more demand, right? You should expect that. And if you raise your price, you should expect less demand, right? And that's kind of what we call like a classic demand curve. However, when we're looking at a business like the NFL, they've shown over time that they can keep raising their prices and it does not impact demand. I'm talking about attendance, right? It does not impact demand for the attendance of the game. And even after all the situations with Kaepernick and all the political unrest, people still kept showing up to the games. So the data was totally different than what people were talking about on the internet. And that's something I want people to really understand. You have a lot of media platforms. Their job is to do what they do. The goal of this channel is for you to be able to take data and take information and to make a better decision about the world around you. So econ is a social science. So what we do often is we take data and we use it to make observations, but also make assumptions, but also infer the behavior of populations, right? And that's what I want to help you do, because once you have that ability, you're not going to be as dependent upon other people who often have a incentive to promote a certain narrative. And if you don't necessarily understand what that incentive is, a lot of us are listening to people and we think these people are giving us good information, but they're really telling us what we want to hear. But sometimes what we want to hear may be incorrect. Just because we want to hear it at that time does not make the information correct, right? And that's something I want to guard against, because when you now have to start making these decisions, you don't understand how to put together a structure or a process to make a proper decision. So then what happens is we fall victim to how we feel, right? What we think, these things, because we don't understand how to put a structural process together to make the proper decision. So that's what we're going to talk about real quick. So let me know what part of the country that you're coming out of. I know it's late night, but like I said, I just decided to jump on. Let me know what part of the country that you can come out of. Let me know that you can hear me, and we're going to get to it, right? So what we want to understand first is the elasticity of goods, right? It measures sensitivity to price changes. So what we're looking for is a percentage change in price. A elastic good will have a greater percentage change in quantity supply to demand, right? So if a good is very elastic, as we start to manipulate the price, the quantity supplied or demanded will change, right? And so we always want to understand that when we're in business, is that as we start to move that price, we want to understand how is supply or demand started to be impacted, right? We always want to understand it as a business. because we want to believe that as we lower our price, it will increase demand for products. So let's say hypothetically, we selling burgers at $10 a burger, right? So based on $10 a burger, we have X amount of people buying burgers. We want to believe if we cut the price of burgers to $5, it will increase demand. We want to believe that, right? Now, if we lower it and that doesn't happen, so let's say we sell them at $10 a burger and we got a set amount of sales per month. And then we believe, okay, well, let's drop the price and see, does that increase sales? And we drop the price and it doesn't increase sales, we in trouble, right? So we cut the price of the burger in half and we still didn't generate the increase in sales that we think justifies cutting that price in half. Because by cutting that price in half, what we do now is we start to cut our margin of profit. So as a business, what we want to do is charge as much as we can to generate the highest margins that we can, right? Because we understand based on our cost structure, based on how our business is set up, if we start to lower our prices, it's going to now eat into our margin. So even if we're lucky enough to generate the sales, we've ate up our profit. So if we are selling burgers at $10 a burger, and on that $10 a burger, we're getting $4 of profit, right? That's a percentage of profit on the $10 sale, right? So whatever that percentage is, somebody just let me know because I don't have a calculator in front of me and I can't do math like that in my head. We now cut that price to $5 and we get that same percentage of profit, right? On every sale. Can we survive on that percentage of profit? Because our cost can still be the same. So now to justify that, what do we have to do now is we got to make sure that there's an increase in numbers of burgers sold to justify the cost cutting, right? So that's why you see a lot of businesses, what they do when sales get impacted, as opposed to trying to cut the price of the product, what do? They look to get rid of cost somewhere else, like let's get rid of labor, right? Because we know that if we get rid of labor, that will directly impact costs, but it won't take away from our profits. But now if we get rid of too much labor, it will impact our profits because we can't do the work it needs to be done. The reason why we're having this conversation again is so that when we're placed in these situations, we can understand how to critically look at this stuff and we don't get caught in superstition. We don't get caught just in how we feel, because what can happen is this. The information that we need is in the world, but we may not know the process to put the information together to come up with an answer. So what we'll do is what your brain will do. Your brain will come up with an answer. So this is why people believe stuff like there were werewolves at one time, or they believe stuff like there's vampires, like real vampires, or they believe stuff like snakes will put their tail in their mouth and roll down the street. Or you got places in Africa where people believe that there's something wrong with albino people. It's because they don't understand a process or a system to come to an answer. So what their brain does is their brain just makes up an answer. And often when that happens, you come up with the wrong answer. But it's easier to control masses of people if they don't know how to come up with answers. They're easily controlled because now what we do is we feed them an answer, and it don't have to be the right answer, but it's something that makes sense to them and it's easier to manage them, right? So that's what we want to understand first, right? So as a business, again, we want to understand the elasticity of goods. Sorry for the typo. To understand what you need to supply and at what price. So we want to do experiments with this, right? As a business owner, can we do pricing of things of that nature to understand what we need to supply and at what price do we need to supply it? Okay. As a policymaker, we want to understand the elasticity of goods, how that impacts the policies involving taxation, minimum wage, subsidies to have on consumer behavior. Because what do we see in pretty much every country in the world? They subsidize certain stuff, right? They subsidize it because they believe that's good for the economy. So if we believe that there's a specific good that benefits our country, but that good is very elastic, where the price of that good rising or falling, the customers or the consumer may be hesitant to buy it. What we may have to do is go in and subsidize it, right? We may have to go in and create a total artificial market for it, like ethanol inside the United States. But we want to kind of understand these things, right? As a policymaker, because many people will promote small government, yada, 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 until it comes to their subsidy or their program that they're getting from government. And then it becomes a different conversation. But when we don't understand this stuff, we just argue in circles with people, right? Because we don't understand how to create a structure to do these things. The majority of arguments that you're hearing, you're even seeing this now with this new administration that's going to come in. The majority of arguments in government, 99% of arguments in government, is arguing over how tax money is spent. It's not arguing over the issues that they're telling you they're arguing over. That's not what they're arguing over. The majority of arguments in government, 99% of arguments in government, are arguing over how tax money is spent, because tax money is the resource. Government's biggest resource is tax money, right? That's what everybody's arguing over. They won't tell you that, because then once we understand that's what it is, we can now create a mathematical model around it. So what they tell you that it is all these other issues. But all those other issues, they're using tax money to support those other issues. So the real issue is tax money, right? It's not these other issues. It's really tax money. But once we understand this money, we now can go create a mathematical model around it to understand it. That's why they're never going to let you know that. They're never going to say and frame it as this is a tax issue, right? Because we can mathematically model tax issues. But these other issues, which are emotional, you can't mathematically model that. And they understand the majority of the population don't want to do that anyway. They just want to argue and be right, right? But when we're doing math, the number's always going to be right. So that doesn't create for good persuasion. It doesn't create for good content. It doesn't allow people to get a lot of buy-in, because when we're doing math, the number's going to be right, not the person, right? So this is why this type of stuff goes on. So as a policymaker, you want to understand the elasticity of goods and how that's going to impact certain policies, because you may be in a position to where you may have to deal with a policy from a financial standpoint, or you may have to support a particular sector of the economy because they can't support it. So here's a good example of what I'm talking about. You see that when there's a hurricane, they tell people they can't price gouge. So there's literally a law against price gouging during a hurricane. But the business owner understands that if I'm selling gas or I'm selling a product and there's a shortage because there's a hurricane, I can demand a higher price and still generate the demand. But the government comes in and says you can't do it. Some of the same people that tell you that they're about freedom and it's the free state of Florida, yada, 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 they're the same people that support price caps during hurricanes. But why can't the business owner charge whatever they want to charge? Is their business. So they come in with policy to stop that, because they understand in that situation, prices on goods will become very inelastic, where when we're not in a hurricane situation, they're very elastic, right? So that's what we're going to talk about with that particular point. So let's go real quick to some examples. So here's some examples of elastic goods, right? Soft drinks. If you're paying $1 for a soft drink, will you pay $5 for it? Probably won't, right? You probably won't. Cereal. If you're paying $2 for a box of cereal, will you pay $10 for a box of cereal? You probably won't. Clothing. If you're paying, $25 for a shirt, you may pay $55 for a shirt based on the brand, but you normally won't buy that same brand that you were paying $25 for. You'll buy for $55. Electronics. We know that there's premium electronics, but there's also a lot of very inexpensive and cheap electronics. Okay. And they're going to get cheaper and cheaper over time. Same thing with cars. We know what people will pay for cars, but there's also a lot of cheap cars out there. Then there's a whole used car market. So we know that the price of cars is very elastic, because we got a used car market where people can get cars way cheaper than what they can get the car brand new. And that's a very robust market. Inelastic goods, life-saving medication, right? Most people, if they have the ability to pay for the medication, they're going to pay it, right? They're going to pay it. Let me get this out of here. They'll pay it. We look at natural gas. People use that to heat their home, things of that nature. If they have the ability to pay for it, they're going to pay it. As the price goes up, they'll figure out a way to pay for it. Why? They need it. They needed to cook. They needed to heat their home. They may needed to run their vehicle. Whatever they need for that energy, they're going to pay for it, right? One of the biggest hindrances of a country being able to accelerate rapidly is being able to get energy at a certain price. And that's a really, really deep conversation that I don't want to say this to be disrespectful, but I'm not sure a lot of people can really wrap their head around that. Right? This is a very deep, people got to really understand that if we're trying to develop and accelerate the growth of a country, us being able to get access to energy, but also access to energy at a specific price is very fundamental for our ability to do that. So this is the reason why we live in the southeast part. I live in the southeast part of the United States. If I go to the islands, gas in the islands is way more expensive than it is inside the United States. Way more expensive. People got to ask themselves how that is a hindrance or how that's challenging to advance those nations if energy is more expensive than where it is in other parts of the world. So they have limited access to energy, then the energy they do have access to is way more expensive, right? We're kind of spoiled in this country on energy costs. What we think is expensive gas or expensive, petroleum is cheap in most parts of the world, including the UK. Electricity, the same thing. Now, electricity in our country is generated in the most part through oil or through petroleum. Then they use that to generate electricity. Some people use hydropower, whatever. But we know that as electricity costs go up, people will try to find a way to pay. I know some people that was in California paying a lot of money for electricity last year. It was crazy, right? But they was paying it. Cigarettes, that's an addictive product. We know that as cigarettes go up, people will find a way to serve their cigarette habit because it's an addictive product with nicotine. Post-secondary education, great example. College costs have gone up over the years. People just keep paying for it. They don't turn it down, right? That's why nobody can ever tell me I got expensive prices because college costs go up over the years. Many people are in school debt. They owe these schools a ridiculous amount of money, right? A lot of people got school debt. They didn't graduate. I know somebody had $50,000 school debt. They was working at Amazon, right? No disrespect to them, but they have 50 grand in school debt, right? And people keep paying it. And they never turn it down because they believe the cost is justified. Colleges have shown that they are selling an inelastic product. As we raise the price, the demand by the consumer doesn't turn down. So you got to understand that. So as a business, you want to understand, are you selling an elastic good or an inelastic good? And then therefore you can price accordingly. Now you can sometimes market to people that you're selling an inelastic good. And that marketing may work like diamonds. Diamonds are extremely overpriced. But people have shown that they will pay a premium on diamonds because of the marketing around diamonds, right? So if you're a business, you may be able to market people to kind of believe that, right? So let's go back here. As a policymaker, do people have the ability to pay? That's what you want to ask yourself. So we're looking at a particular sector of the economy. We're looking at a particular price of a product. We want to ask ourselves, do our consumers have the ability to pay? So we look at how like they subsidize gas in Nigeria. It's because Nigerians do not have the ability to pay for gas, right? Based on what gas is weird that gas costs are extremely high in Nigeria with the amount of oil that they have, but that's a whole nother conversation. So what the government does is they subsidize the gas, right? As businesses, do people have the ability to pay? So as a business, as we're looking to price our products, we don't want to price ourselves out of our market. Our market only has an ability to pay at a certain level, right? We got to kind of find out what that is. But do they have the ability to pay, right? As a business, will they find a way to pay even as prices go up? We're going to show you some examples of that. Right. So as a business, as prices go up, will they find a way to pay? Will our customer cut something else out of their life to pay for this? A lot of people say that, but they never really tested it. And they don't really look at the products where we always see that. We know that in the medication space, they're going to pay it. We know people are going to pay for gas. We know people are going to pay for electricity. We know people are going to buy their cigarettes. Alcohol should be up here too, right? And we know people are going to pay for their post-secondary education. You can almost price post-secondary education at any price and people to pay for it because of what they believe that's going to do for them and the status that they believe they're going to get from it. You could almost put any price on college education and people will find a way to pay for it. That's been proven over time, right? So let's talk about the NFL. NFL has an inelastic product for attendance tickets, right? They do. And this has been proven over time. This ain't been proven over like 1 year. And I'm going to show you the example of what I'm talking about, right? So let me get rid of this. So we're seeing NFL cost inflation, right? Let me do something real quick. Open image in new tab. Okay, let me zoom this in. NFL cost inflation. So from 2013 to 2023, Las Vegas had 108% change in the cost of their tickets, right? Total cost, ticket, beer, hot dog, and parking. Cleveland, 93% increase. Tampa Bay, 88. San Francisco, 83. Kansas City, 82. Carolina, 69, 63, 61, right? Everybody continued over a decade to rapidly increase the cost of their tickets, which includes a ticket, beer, hot dog, and parking, right? Rate of inflation over that period, between the period, was 31%. So we had a 31% rate of inflation. All of these teams, the league average is 39%, right? So the league average is what, 8% over the rate of inflation, right? So 39, 44, 45, 46, and just keeps going up. Only these teams under it was under the rate of inflation, but they still had increases in prices, right? So what you want to understand is that even though there was all that controversy around Kaepernick, everybody saying that it was going to quit the NFL, this, that, and the third, NFL kept raising their prices. And they kept raising their prices and raising their prices and raising their prices and raising their prices, right? And so you want to ask yourself, well, did that cause a decline in people buying tickets? Because we want to understand, is this NFL having inelastic or elastic demand for the ticket prices? So if the demand is elastic, as they raise prices, we'll start to see people turning down buying the actual ticket, right? If it's inelastic, as they raise prices, people won't turn it down. They keep buying it. Even after everybody said that they quit the NFL because of Kaepernick and people taking knees and all that. But we're seeing over those years, they kept raising prices. So again, this is why I want to really help you understand, when you know how to use data and create a model, because data is only used to create models. Data doesn't tell you everything. Data is used to create a model. And I'm going to kind of explain that later on. When you understand how to use data to create a model, then you can understand how to get an answer out of the world, right? But if all we're going to do is just have commentary and talk about it, that allows us to be deceived by people who just can talk good. Because the data's there, but we have to understand how to frame the situation properly to get to the answer to understand it. So if we want to understand, does the NFL truly have an inelastic product? What data do we need to go get to understand that? Right? Or do we get caught up in I don't know, some sideshow argument? But if the question is, does the NFL really have an inelastic product for game attendance? Okay, then what data do we need to go to get that? And then how do we need to model the data to go get it? To find the answer out. Because the information is out there in the world. But what information do we need to go get it? And how do we need to compose a model to understand the answer to that particular question? Once we can do that, that's the end of the conversation. There's no reason to argue with anybody, right? So we have to understand that there's been a concerted effort to make sure that we're not empowered properly to understand how to solve problems, right? Because nobody benefits if we actually understand how to solve problems. Okay, let's keep going. So now what we want to do is we want to compare this to build out our model. We know we have the NFL cost inflation where the tickets are going up. We see at $100 going up to $200, right? Even some tickets like Tampa Bay. Is that Tampa Bay? No, that's San Francisco. San Francisco is over $200. And I get that because they're on the West Coast, things more expensive. I'm surprised that, where is they at? I'm surprised the Giants are more expensive because they're in New York. I'm surprised all the Northeast teams. I'm surprised New England's not more expensive. I'm surprised Jersey's not more expensive. And then where is Philly? Philly's right there. So Philly's about where I thought they were going to be. But I'm surprised the other northeastern cities aren't more expensive. Also surprised Atlanta's not more expensive because Atlanta's an expensive city, right? So those are very surprising, right? But I understand San Francisco raising their prices because the Bay Area is an expensive place to live, right? It just is, right? So what we do is we now say, let's look at total league attendance at regular season games, 08 to 2023, right? Now, this is just very broad data. What I would want to do is split this down by team. So what I would want to do is go from 2013 every year look at attendance for Las Vegas, right? And then compare that to the increase in price. So I can now go find Las Vegas in 2013, what did they price tickets at? Las Vegas in 2014, what did they price tickets at? What was the change in attendance as the cost of the tickets went up? What's the percentage change? And then I model that out. Then I do the same thing for Cleveland. I do the same thing for Tampa Bay. I do the same thing for San Francisco. As ticket prices increased, right? What was the attendance increase? Because we know that overall attendance, right, since 2013 has gone up, right? But then what we want to do, this is overall attendance. What we want to do is break this down per team. So we see the big drop off in 2020. We understand that's the pandemic, but we saw it roar back to 1829. So the year before 2019, it was 1667, right? It dropped off because of the pandemic. It roared back to 1829. So we can ask ourselves, what's the percentage change from 1667 to 1829, right? Between 2019 and 2021, what's that percentage change in increase in attendance overall for the NFL, right? So we do understand that the NFL actually has an inelastic product, because we wouldn't see these broad, and like I said, we haven't split them out team by team, but I don't believe that we would see these broad attendance increases as we've seen price increases if we weren't dealing with an inelastic product or the demand being inelastic for the tickets. So now what we got to do now is break down team by team so we can understand that, right? And then we also can play with the variable. We're talking about ticket, beer, hot dog, and parking. I would take the beer and the hot dog out and just go ticket and parking to figure out whether or not food and beverage cost was a large part of the increase in cost of the ticket. Because everybody that goes to the game is not going to order food. Me personally, when I go to games, I never order food. I don't like game food, but I could be an anomaly. But I would want to pull those out because maybe the cost of food really contributed to the cost of the ticket. Or is it just the ticket and the parking really became the increase in the cost? So I would want to compare those two situations. But again, once we learn how to model properly, that gives us the answer that we want. It kills the argument. Now, a person can come back and say, well, I don't like the data that you pulled. I don't like how the data was compiled. But see, what I like about these type of situations, it's not like a survey data of people. It's just a number based on a particular data point. So the cost of a ticket is the cost of a ticket. It's not like we're surveying people, because when you start doing statistics based on surveying people, just based on your population that you go choose a survey, that can totally skew the actual information that you're presenting. I like this type of stuff. I did this in stats. I did a study on, was Nike the brand of the majority of teams that ended up in the Final Four? It was real easy because all I had to do was figure out what the teams were in the Final Four and whether or not they wore Nike. That was an easy study. I did another easy study. I did another study of, do middle linebackers for football have the majority of tackles on the team? Easy study. All I did was find all the middle linebackers and look at how many tackles do they have compared to the other outside linebackers, the weak side and the strong side. And then I broke it down by defense, whether it was 4-3 or 3-4. It was an easy study because why? It's just an easy data point. It's not like I'm talking to people and asking about their behavior in the marketplace. Those type of studies are very, very complex because kind of just based on what population you go after, that can totally skew the results. So let me give you an example. If I go to a college, if I say I want to figure out how many Black women between ages of 18 and 24 are in college, and then I go to a college to ask that question, well, what's going to happen? The majority of them are going to say, yes, I'm in college because I'm already at a college. So how do I do a random unbiased sample for that population? So often that'll be the breakdown in the study, is how they go after their sample. But it's those type of survey studies where you're dealing with human behavior is difficult. So with this scenario, if I say how many fans would agree to pay more for an NFL ticket this year? Well, just based on what population I go after can determine the answer. If I go after a higher income population in the Southeast, they may be more willing. If I go after a lower income population in, I don't know, Wyoming, they may be less willing. So just the population that I went after to do the survey to get the information, that can skew the results. It can kind of put a bias on the study. That's why I like these type of studies. But again, When we understand how to put models together, it allows us to not get answers to what's going on in the world around us, as opposed to arguing people over stuff, right? And so there's a reason why we're not being taught how to go about things this way, because it doesn't support a lot of the mass control stuff that we're doing in the world right now today. So that's all we're going to talk about, man. It was 11:38. Anybody got any questions about anything before we get up on out of here? Because I'm at 31 minutes. So that's a good time. Anybody got any questions about anything before we leave out? All right, appreciate it, Anthony Russell. Say interesting as always. Appreciate it, man. Glad you got some value from it. So anybody got any questions about anything? Because, we be talking about conspiracy theories. People got, they be blowing up the chat. So now let's get into some meat and potato stuff. Ain't nobody got no questions? Let's get into the meat and potatoes. I know it's late night, but, some people like to eat late. Let's get into these meat and potatoes. So nobody had no questions about nothing? I know it's late. Some people got to go to work tomorrow. So do I. I got to do something early in the morning. I just felt inspired to do this. So big up to L. Vickers. Says they're going to be contributing to NFL Monday Night Revenue, Monday Night Football. So big up to L. Vickers. Hope you have a good time at the game, man. You know what I'm saying? I really do. I forgot who's playing, bro, but I hope you have a good time. I hope it's a good experience for you. So I appreciate you give me some feedback on that. So do your thing out there, man. And blessing to everything you got going on. Robert Reed says, no question. Sign up, take a 3-day tax lien class in January. Yeah, big up. Hope everything go well for you, man. You know what I'm saying? Do your thing. I'm glad you're doing that. So hope everything go well for you, bro. Give us some feedback after January, how it went for you, what you learned, and what you're getting ready to go do with it. But I'm glad, you're moving forward with that situation. So we're going to look forward to you to come back and give us some feedback on what you learned at the seminar and what you're going to be doing. So Mika says, great informational segment. Appreciate it, bro. Edna says, we can't question math is impartial. Yeah, we can question whether or not the math is correct and how it's done. But I just think, Ms. Patterson, the reason why we're walked into a lot of open-ended conversations, a lot of stuff that can't be quantified, is because it allows people to just spin us in a circle. And so something that I'm very passionate about is understanding that the God I serve is also the God of mathematics, right? So I can't be scared of stuff that goes on in the natural world, because math exists in the natural world, because of other people, because they may not understand it. And I'm definitely not a math expert. I'm not like a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, not even close. Like, math was very difficult for me to do. I just had to spend a lot of time on it. But the God I serve is not an enemy of mathematics, right? So I just think this idea to where everything has to be very subjective. So people will say that they believe in the truth until it comes to math, and then it comes into like this ambiguous type stuff. I just think it's very, very interesting. I don't think that's the way in which we should go about it. because sometimes we will have to use mathematics to solve certain problems, right? So I appreciate your comment. Robert Reed said you can be purchasing the course as soon as you get your finances in order. Got to pay some of this credit card debt down. I can understand that, bro. So handle your business, man. It ain't no rush. We'll be here. We've been here for a minute. We'll be here when you get right. So handle your business. So good luck on the tax lien class in January, man. So I want to wish you the best for that. So I'm all about people doing what they got to do to, put themselves in the best position. So do your thing. So we got any questions before we leave? Yeah, I've had him on the show. I think this is probably about a year, 2 years ago. Yeah, I had Akil on the show before. So he's on the channel in the playlist somewhere, but I know I've had him on because I've known him for a minute. So I've had him on here. So big up to all this math. Okay, man. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Y'all make sure y'all stay safe. Have a safe week, and I'll talk to you later.